everyone, welcome back to the Vast and Ominous Comic Vault. I'm Captain Logan.
I'm Eric.
Eric, it's time for more Ultimate Spider-Man, and what are we tackling this time?
We're tackling Volume 13 of Hobgoblin.
Hobgoblin.
Which
Last
is not a
time,
mystery.
I asked you if this was going to be a mystery where we'd be wondering who the Hobgoblin is, and if there might be, like in 616, like, you know, kind of some different people it might be, and if it was convoluted just because it was convoluted in 616, and maybe that's fun. It didn't even occur to me it might just be Harry Osborn. Like, of course that's how we did that. So instead of Second Green Goblin, we just make him a Hobgoblin.
Yes.
And he's also a monster. He's just an orange one for some reason. I guess it just affects his blood differently, and it makes him orange.
We will also get Ultimate Demo Goblin, who's also affected differently for no particular reason. It's
no reason. They have the same DNA. How come they wouldn't look the same?
Well, but they don't have the same DNA.
They don't?
Well, so... the Oz formula, which is what was injected in the spider, and then bits...
No, I just mean they're both Osborns, like...
Well, yeah, but they individually have different DNA.
Okay, sure.
But
sure.
I don't know what Harry was injected with, because when Osborn injects himself, he uses his own personal DNA. So Spider-Man gets spider powers because it's spider DNA mixing with his. Osborn uses his own DNA and says, like, I'll just be a better me.
With Peter's.
No,
right?
No, just with Oz.
I thought the spider thing was part of Oz, though.
The spider was injected with Oz.
This has been like 3 years since.
So the spider had Oz, and then bit Peter, and so it's
okay.
Oz plus spider equals Spider-Man.
Okay.
Oz plus Norman Osborn surely makes Super Norman Osborn. What I don't know is if Harry was injected with Oz formula with Harry's DNA or with Norman's DNA, but either way it could have an alternate effect. Okay. I don't think that's a huge leap that Harry's DNA is slightly different, or Norman's DNA reacts with Harry's slightly differently.
I guess not. No, that makes sense. I was fuzzy on how exactly he even got injected. Like, that scene was kind of ambiguous, I thought.
What's weird is...
it's like in one panel, and I could not figure out what was happening in it.
It seems to suggest that Harry got it from being present when the explosion happened.
Just being there.
But that didn't happen to Dr. Octopus. He just got the arms welded to him.
Yeah.
No, he went kind of crazy, but I don't think that was...
That's why I brought that up, because when you said injected, I was like, I'm not even sure he was injected. Like... I didn't see a needle go in him.
You're right. I wasn't thinking. But so in that case, it's definitely his dad's DNA mixed with Oz, mixed with him. So that might be why it affects him slightly differently.
That makes sense.
Because it's not his DNA. But yeah,
I was confused how it happened.
I was confused by that. This feels like something Bendis had planned, but maybe not from the beginning.
Yeah.
Because Cellar Door goes back to the first Goblin arc. I guess the second Goblin arc, but the first arc that really has the Goblin.
Yeah, and you brought that up a few times where I was kind of waiting for that to come back. And as soon as
it
it said Cellar Door, I'm like, yeah, Eric keeps saying Cellar Door.
Yeah,
no, I know what that is now.
Yeah. Cellar Door is one of the things that Bendis seeds and actually pays off. I also think we deal with Roxxon here, which, I guess, spoilers, Roxxon is actually important.
Oh, really?
I'm sure every time you read it, you just go, hey, Roxxon, I know what that is, and then you keep reading. No, Roxxon's actually important. Oh,
interesting.
Not to spoil anything, but it will be a plot point that Peter keeps stopping supervillains trying to break into Roxxon. I think that's mentioned here.
Because in this...
I think it draws attention to the fact that Roxxon's been attacked.
They want to buy parts of Oscorp, and Harry won't sell it.
Yes.
And his only explanation is, it's mine, and I don't want to sell it. And I wasn't totally sure why. I wasn't sure if it was supposed to be... There's a lot of stuff about Harry in this that I'm really confused about.
I assumed it was because of his dad. Like, that's where his dad died. Well, that's where his dad became this, and I guess kind of where Harry became this. And
was it the same location?
Yes.
I wasn't sure what the significance of that building was.
It's where the explosion happens.
Okay.
So I assume that's why he wouldn't...
I wasn't sure if it was where the explosion happened, or where maybe Harry was when he had the hallucination thinking that he was looking at his father's secret laboratory. Because when that happens, I don't know where he is.
Oh, I think he's actually looking at his father's secret laboratory.
I do not think that's what's happening.
Okay.
And there are tells in that scene, but you've read beyond this, so maybe it has to be that.
I don't think it comes back. That's just what I assumed it was. You think that's in his mind?
I think it absolutely must be. There's no other explanation. It has to be in his mind.
Okay. I thought that was real.
Okay, well, I mean, if you want to just go ahead and get into that now.
I know the guy's
we haven't even set this up at all, but we're just, Harry Osborn comes back, and kind of out of nowhere, out of the blue.
Yeah.
And Mary
because
Jane
he got a
and
clean
Peter
bill
are
of health
both
from
very-
S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yes, and there's a big mystery that's not resolved here that I'm hoping Bendis actually gives us later. I don't know, because some things don't get paid off.
Which is why it didn't. Or is it the why it doesn't show up on his like medical stuff at all?
Yes.
I don't think so.
Oh, come on. That's a problem if that never comes
It
back.
might be.
Because
That might be addressed, but I don't
he makes
think so.
a big... That sucks if that's the case. Because Bendis... I was worried you were going to say that. He makes a big deal at the end of this with Nick Fury, who's like, how do we not... know that he had goblin DNA and could transform into this. Like, how did we send him off into the world? And Peter was wondering that earlier, was like, surely they wouldn't have sent him off if they knew he had this.
I could be
and
wrong.
It's made a big, giant mystery at the end.
I could be wrong. Like, I know what the next Goblin arc is.
He basically comes out and says there's an explanation, but I'm not giving it to
I know
you
what the next
yet.
Goblin arc is, and that's from the Stuart Immonen stuff, and I've only read that stuff once,
Okay.
as opposed to some of this other stuff that I've read a couple of times. So it could be addressed. It could also be that I'm right, and the bunker is real, and that Harry gets the Oz formula in the bunker. Because there was a bunch of Oz in that bunker, so maybe he was clean when he left, and somehow, while he's being, like, brainwashed, brain-controlled, he... Because, like, it's full of Oz stuff.
I don't see how, though. Because... So are you saying then the flashback we get is not a real flashback?
No, I think he got hit, but do we see him transform in that flashback?
No, but that flashback's supposed to tell us why he's able to turn into the Goblin.
Yeah, but he's such an unreliable narrator. Because his mind has been so messed with, he has been completely reprogrammed. But, like, there is a fake person that is not real that lives inside Harry's brain that gives him information that his father had a hypnotist, like, deep put there. Like... The man that says cellar door and turns on and off Harry Osborn's memories isn't a real person. It is...
Yeah,
It was psychologically put there in his brain.
Do we even know that for sure?
Yes. Well,
How
unless
do we
he's
know
invisible.
that for sure?
Because when Peter comes to talk to him, he's not there.
No, I know that. Okay, so let's go ahead and break this down, shall we?
So he might be invisible.
Let's break this down, okay?
Sure.
First of all, he clearly is invisible. He's not there. He's
Yes.
never there the entire time.
Yes.
But I don't know if Harry's crazy and conjured it himself, or if his father actually did hypnosis on him. Because that's also all given from that guy that's not real.
Yes.
So if the thing I'm saying is probably real and you're saying that it might not be because we have an unreliable narrator, I have to say the same thing about what you're saying.
Well,
and that seems even less like how would the...
Except we set up hypnosis and cellar door. That's the only thing that gives us that. Is...
But how do we know cellar door is not all in his head?
Well, because in the first Goblin arc,
Oh, yeah, okay.
he's being programmed. We have a scene with Harry where
And that's
where
outside
he's,
of
yes,
his
where
head.
he's
Okay,
being
okay,
hypnotized,
okay.
and they say cellar door in that
Okay,
scene.
got you.
So
Yeah,
cellar
got you
door
there.
is real, and the hypnosis is definitely real.
Which
I take all of the stuff with the figment of the imagination guy
Okay.
as real.
Okay, so
Not real, but
him
real.
Him leading. Okay, so if that's the case, that he's conjured because of a thing that really happened. I'm just trying to noodle this and get
Yes,
this right,
yes.
because I wasn't sure about that.
Yes.
I didn't think that was what was happening, actually. I thought he was a complete figment of his imagination. You're saying, and that real man may or may not have actually existed.
He
We
did.
don't-
He is in the first arc.
Oh, he is. Okay.
Yes.
See, if I'd read this more recently, I wouldn't have had that.
He is the
problem.
guy who tried to kill Peter in the first arc.
Okay, well then that makes
Yes.
that makes sense.
So he's real, and we know that Harry was given hypnosis, and the key word was cellar door.
Okay, if that's the case, then, and especially because it's cellar door, and they find the laboratory through sort of a cellar door. Yeah, so the laboratory may be actually
And that might
there.
be where he gets his powers, which might be why it didn't show up before. But that's a question mark.
But then it's weird that he gives us the flashback the way he does, because I'm not 100% sure that that's supposed to even entirely be from his perspective, because like he puts a color filter on it, and it's like I thought that was more for the audience's benefit.
I'm also unclear on whether or not the figment of the imagination guy, I forget what his name is, but I'm unclear on whether he can take control of Harry's body.
Yeah, because when he picks him up in a car, what is happening? He goes and picks him up in a car. What is happening? And that's part of why I wasn't sure if the laboratory was real, because I went back and thumbed through this a second time, and I was like, well, wait a minute. The first time he sees that guy, none of that can really be happening, because he's picked up in a car by a man who doesn't exist.
I think it's...
So how do you know that when he takes him to a place, that's real? And he takes him there in that car, I think.
So there are two possibilities. Yeah, he takes him in a car. I don't know if it's the specific.
I'm pretty sure he picks it, because he says, I have something I need to show you. I think he picks him up in that car and takes him there.
So...
What's happening? So
there are two possibilities.
Okay.
One is none of that actually happens, and that's all like a mental thing in Harry's head. That like maybe psychologically is what unlocks the Hobgoblin, right? Like Harry believes that this has happened, and that's what unlocks the thing in his head that lets him turn that. That's possible. The other thing that's possible is just complete Fight Club rules.
That makes the most sense of anything. I want that to be the case.
Or it's complete Fight Club rules. And so what we're seeing is what's really happening, but we don't get the flashbacks where we see it without them being there, so I'm not sure. I also know Bendis has said in interviews that unreliable narrator is his favorite kind of story to tell.
Sure.
But he's also said that he is aware that it is readers' least favorite kind of story to read.
Well, I find that really interesting, but like the problem is it can get real cheaty.
Mm-hmm.
Where you're like, well, it doesn't matter what really happened. No, it does. I want it to track eventually, even if I don't have all the information. Okay, let me tell you the main reason that I thought for sure until you've now made me question everything. I'm questioning. I'm in the friggin' Matrix at this point. Read it twice. Didn't know what I was reading. The reason that I thought that laboratory, the big tell anyway, that immediately told me that laboratory was not real. Riddle me this: why are there goblin masks in it?
Honestly, and you're not gonna like this answer, I think they're just having fun. I think those are just cutesy references.
You can't do that with a thing like this, because I'm looking for clues. None of this is adding up, and I'm confused, and I'm trying to figure it out, and I feel like he's giving me this kind of... This is why I told you earlier before we were recording, I'm mixed on this arc.
Yeah.
There's other stuff too, but...
Because it's also possible...
This is not a goblin that has a mask, and not a Norman Osborn who intentionally became a goblin. Moreover, it's like the persona of Green Goblin as a name doesn't even come up until this, and it's just Peter calling him something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think... Okay, so you might be right, but I think these are just cutesy. I think.
He shouldn't have done
It's weird that it's Ultimate, though, so you might be right. Like, the 616 could be cutesy, and the movie could be cutesy, but, like, having the Goblin mask, you might be right that none of this is real.
Okay, but, like...
And he's also got the Doc Ock arms.
He's got the Ock arms, but he's also got...
He's got a Goblin body.
He's got a Goblin body.
It's a suit.
Yeah, it wasn't a suit. I don't understand.
So
it's almost like the artist forgot what the Goblin was in the same arc where he still has a transforming monster Goblin. What is going on? What I'm talking about is not a nitpick, man.
No. So I'm going to guess that the flashback where we see him turning into the Hobgoblin is real, and maybe you're right, and none of this is real, and it's all in his head, and this is like a psychological trigger.
I hope that's what it's supposed to be, because that's the only thing I can read from the book. If it's what you're saying, that's not enough. There's not enough of that actually in it.
What we needed, and it's annoying because Bendis loves to replay scenes, and I hate it. What we needed was to replay these scenes and see what really happened, like in Fight Club and Joker.
Yes, of course.
No, you're right. And I honestly... Because I know he's the Hobgoblin, like, I know what I'm getting into when I'm reading this, I wasn't even thinking about it. Like, I was like, yeah, and he's gonna get a psychological trigger, and it's gonna, yeah. I wasn't questioning any of this, because I just knew what happened.
I thought that was supposed to be a clue, where it's like, he shouldn't have a mask. How does that make any sense?
You might be right, that might be a clue. I always took that as just cutesy, but...
Okay.
But then we do get the flashback returns to the Hobgoblin, so probably you're right. He probably never physically goes there. And it's probably all in his head, and, like, somehow that is...
And then,
like a thing.
If that's the case, then... The problematic thing there is, if Bendis never later, like we said earlier, explains why they couldn't find any trace of Goblin DNA in him, we now don't have the explanation you thought maybe we did.
No.
Because he didn't go to a place in this where he could have gotten that.
No, the best explanation would be that there is some kind of psychological trigger that somehow works physiologically.
Yeah.
That, like, his body doesn't start producing, like, goblin hormones or whatever.
And maybe that works, but it's not in there. I don't know that for sure.
It's not in there. And
he turns pretty darn fast if that's the case. You'd think it would take time.
Mm-hmm. And I don't know... I know what the next Goblin arc is, and I remember the big thing that happens in it, but I don't remember much of the actual story from it. So,
how do you feel about the way they handle Harry the character?
I think Harry is really sad. Like, I think I mentioned in the very first video. No, I think it was in the first Goblin arc. I think I mentioned, like, there's a point where, like, they do the cellar door thing, and he walks out. And then
is that the arc where at the end Harry says, "I'm going to kill you all"?
No. That's at the end of Ultimate 6.
Okay. Because I thought the first Goblin arc was just the first arc. Like,
well, so Goblin shows up in the first arc, but he just shows up and attacks the school. But like, we don't interact with Norman as they like. I always think of the one where Goblin throws Mary Jane off the bridge as the first Goblin arc. Okay, there you go. But in that arc, I'm pretty sure
in my head those were the same arc. They're different arcs.
Yes.
It's been a while.
I'm pretty sure in that video, you can go back and check, but I'm pretty sure in that video, and tell me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure in that video I said, like, this is the last time Harry Osborn will ever be happy. And even then, it's a lie.
Yeah.
He's not even actually happy. I think Harry Osborn is a incredibly tragic figure who is completely psychologically shattered and broken and has no idea who he is as a person and is trying to, like, get the last vestiges of his life. Like, but also, like, I don't know. I think there's a lot going on with Harry, and I think he's interesting just in that, like, he is trying to be a normal teenager, but he's angry that he came back and things weren't the way he left them. And that's fueling his already, like, the psychosis that his dad built into him, which is also being built upon by just the massive trauma of everything that's happened to this poor kid. Because the last time we saw this kid, not just did he say, "I'm going to kill you all," but his dad spent the entire arc asking for his son, and they brought Harry Osborn. He's like, "That's not my son. I meant Peter."
Yeah, I forgot about that. Well, and he's in, like, complete denial about the fact that his dad doesn't care about him. Mm-hmm. Like, I feel like there's a lot of stuff with the Osborns that I've seen in other versions that this just takes to the nines. Mm-hmm. Just goes a lot farther with. Because movie Harry has that too. This is
movie Harry done so much.
It is, yeah. Well, and I like that he doesn't hate Spider-Man for killing his father. He also doesn't think that his father's dead. Ultimately, like, he thinks he is, but then that guy tells him he's not, and then the guy in his head. And I'm not actually sure what is happening with Norman Osborn right now.
I know where Norman Osborn is.
S.H.I.E.L.D. claims... I think S.H.I.E.L.D. claims they have him.
They have Norman Osborn Lock and Key.
Yeah, okay. I just wasn't sure if that was true.
His whole, not even motivation, but, like, the thing that the guy in his head is trying to force him to do is find
Norman Osborn. Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure S.H.I.E.L.D. has him.
So is that supposed to be, like, why is he conflicted that way? Like, does he... Like, why does he think that he's dead, but then there's this other part of, like, where the hallucination that's not just a hallucination he conjured up knows that Norman's alive? Like, I don't understand that.
My assumption is that there is, whatever triggered this, and it might just be Harry being let free, but my assumption is, like, that's just part of Harry's now programming, is, like, my dad's missing, this is it's an escape plan. Like, it's a long-term escape plan. Like, if anything ever happens to me, Harry will be activated, and he will come and break me out.
And that might happen even if Norman was dead. Mm-hmm. It may not matter what actually happened.
And
so, like, the guy in his head may not, like, there's no reason he would have, like, real information Harry doesn't have.
Because you could very easily, like, the end of this arc or the end of a later arc, and you know Norman's not dead because Norman kills Peter and also shows up in Miles.
Yes, right. Yeah,
so you know Norman's not dead. But, like...
No, I knew that. I just wasn't sure where he was.
But, like, from Harry's perspective, or just from the writing perspective, not knowing what comes later, it's very possible the end of this arc or the end of a later arc is Harry goes to where his dad is supposed to be and finds out he's dead.
He's been dead the whole time.
But he's not.
So
yeah.
My interpretation was that Harry was activated when he sees the Spider-Man mask.
You might be right.
That was the thought I had.
Although I think he's already...
Is he already doing stuff before that? Because that's pretty early.
Well, he goes there...
Oh, no, he's already been there. No, I'm wrong. No, because that's all flashback. The second issue, we find out where he's been. And
because all of the flashback stuff takes place before he goes back to school.
Yeah, there's a flashback issue that interrupts a scene. Mm-hmm. So the end of the first issue of this arc, Harry shows up to Peter
1 week ago,
and they're about to talk about the he's Spider-Man and what happened to Norman, and then we're gonna go from the day he got let out by Nick Fury up to that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And inside of that is when the bald guy in his head drives up in a car and drives him away.
Yeah. So we're already... Yeah, he's already evil at that point.
Okay.
Or, evil. Like,
yeah, triggered.
Yeah, he's a real... Like, is the Winter Soldier evil?
I was going to say it's Winter Soldier. Yeah, he's not evil.
But no,
he might be bat stuff crazy in a way that Winter Soldier wasn't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think a lot of this is supposed to be unreliable narrator.
I think he's cheating with some of that. I really do.
Yeah, and it's also... It's not his book, which makes it more difficult. Like, if this was a Harry Osborn miniseries, you might be able to get away with that a little bit better.
Yeah, good call.
But, I mean, we did that with the... What this needed was the one issue that Norman got, where we saw those like, things that were talking about the circles and stuff that I told you would never pay off, with all the, like, little, like, ghosty things. Yeah. We needed that for Harry.
Can I tell you another, like, huge thing that he does that makes it cheating? We're just trying to throw off the reader to not even think that guy's in his head. Harry goes unconscious, and he's standing over him talking.
Yeah.
You can't do that.
So that's, like, that has to be either Fight Club rules or it's all in his head and they're never physically there. Like, that's the only way those two things could do.
But the problem is if he's unconscious, he can't be imagining it.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. It's all in your head. Yeah, and so is that guy, because that guy's part of your subconscious.
Okay, maybe.
Yeah, it's like the, and if it's real, it's like a Tyler Durden
It's
thing.
closer to a computer program even.
Yeah.
It isn't that. It's a hypnotic thing.
Yeah. But we never see him take control of his body, so I don't know if he can do that. So you might be right, and that might be entirely in his head. But I don't know. Sure. And I don't remember what we find out in the next arc with Hobgoblin, so...
So I'm going to make the suggestion, and I don't mean to be, like, totally negative on this, because there's stuff I liked, and we'll talk about it when you talk about the MJ relationship stuff, certainly. But I think some of that stuff might be sloppily handled because Bendis, for whatever reason, was rushed. There's at least a few things here that make me think that this, over some other arcs we've had before, was just real rushed out the door.
Well, we talked about it last time, the 3 2-issue arcs felt like Bendis is doing something important over on, like, Avengers or one of the other books he's writing.
Yeah.
And so he doesn't have the time for this, this felt like a real arc, kind of.
It is a real arc, but there are some details that, and some of this may sound slightly nitpicky, but when you put it all together, you're like, you're rushed, and B, do you have an editor? Does he have an editor on this book?
Yeah, it's Nick Lowe, the guy that made him do the Wolverine art.
Well, that guy's not doing his job here.
Well, I guess that was the assistant. Who's the actual editor?
Yeah,
John Barber!
I don't know who that is.
He's currently running IDW Comics. He edited the Transformers line for the past.
So, I don't mean to go after John Barber, but I'm going to.
He edited all the really great Transformers comics and wrote half of them.
This, for whatever reason, everybody had to do this in a fraction of the time they usually do, in my opinion. Because, first of all, weird number of typos in this book. I don't know if you noticed it. There's stuff like, and like I can't find, like, and find you the page right away. There's stuff like thought without a T, so it's though, like stuff like that.
I caught 1 or 2 of those. Or I consciously caught 1 or 2 of those where I didn't fill it in with my brain that it was supposed to be.
And then can I tell you,
which we obviously know Bendis notoriously bad at spelling and grammar.
Yeah. It's like it wasn't edited. But the bigger thing is, this drove me crazy. Harry Osborn has 2 first names. Did you notice it? 'Cause he does. I went back and checked. So Harry is short initially for Harrison. Mary Jane calls him that. Calls him Harrison in the first issue.
And then later it's Harold.
It is Harold 3 times after that. It changes to Harold in the same arc.
I did not catch that. Is Harold...
Really? Like, that's crazy. And is Harry ever short for Harold? Like,
yeah.
Is it? Okay.
I would think that before Harrison. But I've never met anyone named Harrison.
No, neither have I. I've just seen them. I've just seen people named Harrison in TV shows.
Well, Harrison movies. Ford, like but nobody ever calls Harrison Ford Harry. Like I would, Harold. I think like Harrison's a cool name. You don't want to shorten Harrison.
No, you're right. I guess Harry is short. Yeah.
So.
That
is it like only the bald guy that calls him Harold? Is it possible that like that's a poor programming thing? No, it's probably
I think maybe it is. But I should have looked up the wiki and seen what the wiki claims it is, because I bet it has something about like Mary Jane
Harrison / Harold.
Mary Jane's an idiot and thought his name was Harrison for some reason.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's pretty bad.
That is. I did not notice that.
See, the reason I picked up on it was because I was like, who's Harrison? Oh, you're deciding what Harry's short for. That's cool. Mm-hmm. And later it says Harold, and I was like, but his name is Harrison. And then it's still Harold. I guess his name is not Harrison.
Look, maybe it's an homage to Stan Lee's famous, because... Like, remember, like, it's Robert Bruce Banner because he kept because he kept writing people calling him Bob. So it became Robert Bruce Banner. Which doesn't make any sense because his name is usually Bruce. It should be Bruce Robert Banner.
Well, and then famously Peter Palmer.
There's a couple of those very famous ones.
I do not think that's what's going on here.
Ironically, I don't think Tony Stark ever got messed up, and he said the whole reason he named them alliteratively was so it was easy to remember.
This seemed like the like one time Deanna Troi calls Will Riker Bill and then never again, except it's in the same arc.
Yeah.
Anyway.
No, that's definitely a mess up. How did you feel about the Hobgoblin?
Okay. I was real on it, honestly.
So
I thought the hallucination thing was interesting, and I'm with you. I think he's really tragic. Like the Harry Osborn stuff, I was on board for. But like it felt like, and this has been this with villains, he's just a plot device so that Peter and Mary Jane can have the relationship drama that they've got.
Except that he wants to die, which is an interesting thing to put on Peter. The problem is...
Okay, I didn't even think about that thematically, because at that point I was tuned out. Like, I did not care about that.
Yeah, the problem is
that's fair.
This arc needs to be an arc shorter, and the Hobgoblin stuff... When we actually get
you mean an issue shorter?
Yeah, sorry, an arc shorter. An issue shorter. If not...
I like this, okay, but it shouldn't exist.
If not 2, because when we finally get to the Hobgoblin fight, it goes too long, and, like, it really feels like, I get it.
Yeah. Well, and when he says he wants to die, I thought he was just in pain. Like I've seen that in so many, like scary monster things.
Well, I think it is.
Yeah.
But like,
it just felt really typical. I wasn't even thinking about the thematic Peter Parker notion, in that where, Peter is feeling responsible for people that have died, and yeah, I didn't even think about that.
And now his friends asking him to kill him.
The other problem is we didn't spend. It's also, again, it's been a few years since we reviewed those first few arcs, but I don't think we spent anything like enough time with Harry before the crazy stuff started happening.
I agree. It's funny because his excuse
keep
for
reminding myself that they were friends for any amount of time. Like there's an obligatory line where he says we were childhood friends. I'm like, I didn't experience that. I don't mean that I need to have flashbacks to childhood. Don't do that. I'm just saying that I didn't experience them. I didn't see their rapport enough. I don't know enough about what their dynamic is like.
Well, and it's interesting because
so when he comes back and Peter's suspicious of him, like that's the character dynamic that I am used to with these characters is Peter doesn't know if he can trust this guy, and so I have to keep reminding. Oh, he's his friend. Okay.
Well, and it's interesting because the whole reason Bendis gives for taking the 11-page Spider-Man origin story and stretching it to 7 issues is he wants you to care about Uncle Ben before he dies.
Yeah.
But that's also the last time Harry Osborn is a normal person, and he is just there.
Yeah.
Like...
And then it weirdly ends up being the same problem Amazing Spider-Man 2 has, because Harry Osborn should have been around before that movie.
Yeah. Yep. But it, I really like Peter's relationship with Harry in this, because... So I think there's a fair debate that the arch nemesis of Ultimate Spider-Man is Norman Osborn, Kingpin, or Dr. Octopus. You haven't gotten to the big Dr. Octopus stuff, but Dr. Octopus will do stuff that will elevate him to that status. But I think... Like, Kingpin's big, because, like, obviously Bendis likes writing Kingpin, and, like, the next story arc will have Kingpin, and it's my favorite story. So, like, cool. Kingpin is a big looming presence over this book. But Peter doesn't...
Some of my favorite stuff so far has been the Kingpin stuff.
Peter doesn't react to him the way he does Norman Osborn. And I think that elevates...
It's personal?
And he's scared of him.
Yeah.
He's not scared of Kingpin. Like, he's a little scared of Kingpin, but, like...
This is supposed to be the anti-Uncle Ben.
Mm-hmm. So, all of the Mary Jane stuff is built on the crux of... Peter's not just acting irrational because it's a stressful situation.
Yeah.
It's a stressful Osborn situation.
Yes.
And Osborn is who scares Peter. Like, of all of the enemies he's faced, that is the one where he just... Because it's deeply personal. Nothing else is deeply personal like that. And he's the one that almost killed Mary Jane. And he's also obsessed with him. And Osborn is also obsessed with Peter. And like... It's clearly like almost PTSD for Peter. Like, the second Harry's there, Peter's not thinking rationally for this entire arc.
That's right.
Because the Osborns are involved, and I think that is a great way to play the Osborns in Peter Parker's life. Is like, they are the ones that when their name gets mentioned, Peter is scared.
Yeah.
And, like, uncomfortable.
And it makes it worse, and I buy his being, as freaked out as he is, partly because the Carnage thing just happened, and... Like, that wasn't an Osborn situation, but it was also personal because it was him.
Mm-hmm. And
because Carnage was like a piece of him.
He's even more fixated on losing people.
Yes.
So he's even more worried about Mary Jane or Aunt May dying.
It's almost like he
relates Carnage to Norman Osborn in the Carnage arc because it's bad scientist.
Yes. Yeah.
He's like, you're just like Norman Osborn.
Well, and am I remembering that right? Didn't Connors work with Osborn?
I don't think
I can't remember.
So.
Maybe not.
I don't think
it's
so.
easy to mix this up with both Amazing Spider-Man and the Spider-Man
movies.
movies.
Because the Amazing Spider-Man movies are obviously pulling from this stuff.
From this so much, yeah.
Not enough, but they are pulling from it.
Sure, yeah.
How is this not the Goblin we did?
Yeah.
If you're not going to try and do a costume, how do we not just do the ultimate Goblins? Right?
Yeah, especially because you had a real, goofy, creepy-looking monster in your first movie. Like,
yeah, and, like, Electro's, like, all CGI. Like,
you're not worried about CG monsters.
Just do this monster and throw him on a glider. Like...
Or don't even put him on a glider. I don't even if you even have to have that, necessarily.
He'd have to leap there.
Okay.
Because remember, he just comes in at the end on the glider. Like, he has to just come in on at the end.
Well, and you don't want it to be lame, like, we associate the glider with the goblins. And,
yeah.
That's true.
But... I think the Harry MJ stuff is great. Or not the Harry, the Peter MJ stuff is great. I know you don't like it when they get more melodramatic, so I'm interested to know what you thought of it.
I'm a little mixed on it.
Okay.
Like, I was more won over on it on a second read. I was not completely sure about it first time out. I don't know. This is difficult for me to break down. I don't know. So, What I like about it is that it's so complicated. I like that Peter is, as you say, irrational, but he's also right.
Mm-hmm.
But so
she does not listen to him. And puts herself in danger needlessly.
More importantly, than she doesn't listen to him, because the way he was treating her was, in my mind, borderline sexist. But
he does grab her.
Well,
he physically grabs her.
Not just that he grabs her,
hand.
but he tells her, "You need to do whatever I say and don't ask questions." And I had a hard time with that. But I get that, like you say, he is irrational. The difficult thing is, he's both somewhat correct and not treating her right.
He's not dealing with it the correct way, absolutely.
And he recognizes that early on. And as things get harder and as she keeps making mistakes, he is less berating himself for yelling at her. Because remember, right at the beginning, he's like, oh, I can't believe I yelled at her. What am I doing? He never does that again.
Mm-hmm.
The issue I have is the follow-up issue, where the books for like when we get to Mary Jane's perspective on it, it almost feels like the book is throwing her completely under the bus.
Are you talking about the date issue?
Yes.
Okay. So I have huge issues with the date issue.
Okay.
If we're just talking
I'm
about
taking this as a piece, right?
Okay. Okay. So if we're just talking about the lead up to the breakup,
yeah,
I think all of that works. This issue,
for the most part, I think it does too. It's just I think even before you get to that issue. Let's stay in the relationship for a minute.
Yeah.
Even before you get to the dumped, I think it's called that
yes.
issue.
Where it says Tandy Bowen bites. You know who Tandy Bowen is?
Yeah.
That's
Dagger.
Yeah.
Well, remember I asked you about that last arc. She's in a scene. And you didn't remember it.
Yeah.
She's brought up. She's brought up, she's in a scene.
You're right.
Somebody talks to her and says, "Oh, Tandy." And I asked you,
right.
is that the same Tandy? Is that who that is? And then she's mentioned here, yeah.
So I think he likes her, but I don't think he intends to use her yet because she doesn't show up until Miles.
She doesn't show up until Miles, yeah. Or at least she's not Dagger. I think she's in a scene and somebody says something to her.
But do they say, when she shows up in Miles, because I didn't read that stuff.
Yeah.
Do they say that she used to go to Peter's school?
I don't remember.
Because Peter's significantly older than Miles. I mean, not significantly, but
yeah,
Peter's older than Miles.
So it doesn't make a lot of sense, does it?
No, I think this is just references. For some reason, in this year when these comics were coming out, Bendis was on like a kick of mentioning...
Cloak and Dagger.
Yeah.
He was going to mention something about Cloak and Dagger.
Yeah.
Okay, anyway, so, with, I think even before you get to that issue, she is, like, almost too understanding. Almost. I don't know. Like...
I don't think she is in their confrontation, other than the... Because I've been on both sides of that in an argument.
Yeah.
I've had the person I'm arguing with, and I've myself been that person argument. Where you're like, you're right.
She should say, you're right, but I won't be treated this way. I think that's the difficulty I'm having, is that she seems at the end of this to be okay with the way he's treated her, and I don't get that.
But... So it's not okay the way he's treating her,
yeah.
But it's understandable the way he's treating her. Because if I'm in that situation, I'm not thinking that. Maybe later, but in the moment, I am not thinking that. I am like, I'm the jerk here. Like, I didn't listen and I could have died, and they told me.
I'm trepidatious because I have reservations, but I'm having trouble articulating.
Okay. Because they have a big fight in an earlier arc. I think it is that Goblin arc. That you didn't like, and I agreed with you. This one, I think, works.
It's better than that.
Because again, Peter's not acting correctly because it's the Osborns, but also Mary Jane does keep screwing up, and she knows that.
Yeah, and again, I think the bigger issue is she doesn't understand the stakes. Like, she doesn't, and she's not seeing the almost, like, fourth wall comic book formula of Peter gets people killed on accident. That's what happens. And he's seeing that. Yeah,
well, and that's also heightening him here. But the last time they had this argument was in that previous Goblin arc, and it was the same argument, which was, I told you to stay away from the Osborns, and you didn't listen. She's like, well, you didn't give me context. He's like, when I say stay away, stay away. And she does it again here. With the Osborns again, who almost killed her last time. He was like, stay away. Like... And she's like, well,
I think it almost would play better if it wasn't in the comic and I had like actors giving performances, right? Because what really rang true to me there was what I read as Peter not being upset as much about what she was saying or even what she did, but as her kind of flippant attitude about it. And I've been on that side of that sort of argument too, where it's like, What's frustrating is that you didn't get to the same place I am now. How did you not think of that? Like how, like why would you even think to go to Harry Osborn? Like, what is wrong with you? Why would you do that?
Yeah, I've told you the Osborns are dangerous.
So there's in that scene, there's a particular exchange.
And there's also the added layer of learning that they dated.
Right, yeah, and I like how that's handled, because it's not obnoxiously love triangle-y, but there's an exchange in that scene, in that argument, where he says, you need to stay away from Harry, or stay away from the Osborns, okay, and her next line is, okay, but why? And he's angry that she needs an explanation, but she did agree to it. And it's like he missed that she said okay at all. And the problem is that I can see the words on the page. And she said what he wanted her to say. And then later, in the same page, he says, say okay. And I'm like, but she did. If it's spoken dialogue and they're talking over each other, that works in a way it doesn't as easily in a comic.
Obviously,
because
Bendis writes.
She said it, though. You see what I'm saying? So, like...
But I get when she follows it with but why, and he's like, it doesn't matter but why. I said don't.
But my response were I Mary Jane, and I'm not criticizing Bendis for not having her say this, my response were I Mary Jane would be, a couple arcs back, I felt like we were partners. Like, we told each other everything. And, yeah, I goofed up, and I guess I should have told you about Harry from before. It didn't occur to me to. We barely dated. It wasn't even a thing. Now, I don't get why she never brought that up. That is a thing. I don't get why she wouldn't have told him that.
I get when would you bring it up, and then after a while it becomes awkward.
It becomes a big... Yeah, we've all had that too, right?
Yeah, where it's like, well, how do I bring this up now? And also, why is it important Harry Osborn's gone? Like, I get how that situation happens.
I think it's easier now. I think you do that in a text now. I think that is totally a text conversation.
Yeah.
Like, can I tell you something I should have always told you?
Yeah.
You're going to hate me for it. So much easier to do, right?
Yeah, yep.
On a phone.
Yep.
But anyway, I have reservations before I have complaints. I'm not totally... overall, I think that is handled really well.
Well, and overall. I also... they're both wrong.
Yeah.
They're both 15.
Exactly, and we've talked about that.
Yeah.
Like, he has a really good handle
He's writing teenagers.
How those relationships are, yeah.
Which brings us to the final issue, which is kind of its own thing. Like, it's an epilogue, I guess.
It is.
So, this begins my second subscription in my life, right? Like I am subscribing to this a second time.
Yeah.
After that first time with Geldorf, and them double shipping, and I'm only getting it for half a year. This is... like 2 or 3 issues into this arc is when my second subscription starts. So I'm going to...
Or do you mean bi-monthly shipping?
Bi-monthly shipping.
Yeah.
No, bi-weekly. Bi-monthly would mean it's coming out...
every other month.
Yeah.
Which is what you had, right?
No, it was bi-weekly. It's coming out twice a month.
Semi-monthly. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
So
you said half a year, which confused me. So I thought you meant you only got 3 or 4 issues.
No, I got 12 issues in 6 months.
Okay.
But I'd expected to renew the subscription at the next birthday/Christmas. I don't remember which.
You explained this, but it's been a long time.
So this is my second subscription, and they are monthly at this point.
Yeah.
So it's not it's not as big a problem. So I'm going to explain 2 reactions to this final issue. One is probably 15 or 16-year-old Eric, and the other is adult Eric.
last Tuesday, yeah.
Yeah, which has 2 very different reads of this issue. This is like porn for a 15-year-old, and I don't mean in like the physical sense. I mean, at 15, boy, we all want to have a girl that's so head over heels with us that no matter what we do, she thinks you're perfect, and you want someone to love you that much. As an adult, this issue is really troubling.
Because it's just not believable? Is that what you're saying?
It's only okay if she's not entirely right, and the book thinks she's entirely right. When he says, which by the way, that's Mark Raxton, Mark Raxton, who is Molten Man in the normal comics, which is why his band sings Molten Man.
Oh, cool! I didn't realize that. Okay. So we're talking about this guy who hits on her in a mall, and then they sort of go on a date.
Who looks kind of really like Morbius, right?
Yes, he does. I had that exact thought. Yeah. He looks like that morbid kid in Season 2 Smallville that's obsessed with Edgar Allan Poe.
I don't even remember that.
Byron.
But so...
was his name.
She goes out with this rock star, like teenage rock star. He's in a band. She goes out with a guy in a band.
Who's playing guitar and clearly thinks the music they're playing is not great.
And
the
I'm
guy
pretty
who's
sure
singing is
bass
terrible.
guitar.
Yeah.
Because of course he's a bassist. And he drives her home.
Yes.
And they kiss a little bit, and then, I think he kisses her.
He kisses her, and then she pushes him off.
Yes. And she has this whole speech, or he has this whole thing where he's like, what is so great about Peter Parker?
And everybody says that through the issue. It's not just him. Flash has that line. Different
And
people have
she
that line.
says everything.
Everything.
I want that line to be a naive teenager who can't see past someone's fault.
That was my problem with it.
I don't think it's that way.
That's why I said they threw her completely under the bus, because the end of that issue says she's completely wrong and he's completely right, and I don't like that.
And part of the problem, now you don't know this, but part of the problem is Peter will date 2 other people throughout the course of Ultimate Spider-Man.
Oh wow.
So
they're broken up now.
Oh yes. Yes. We are getting into a different relationship.
Man.
She will never date another person.
He doesn't date Black Cat, does he?
No. Although Black Cat is in the next arc, and we will find out why he doesn't date Black Cat.
Okay.
But
if you remember, she was all over him last time.
She was.
The look on your face tells me something interesting.
There's an amazing scene in the next arc.
I can't wait. I know that look.
Where we find out that this entire series is actually from Peter's point of view, and for the first time ever, you get a not Peter point of view shot. It's amazing.
Well, that makes, just the way you said that makes the Harry thing even more confusing.
Sure. She will never date another person. Ever. Like, this is the most she will have.
Wow.
Which is unfair to Mary Jane.
Yeah.
It's also,
That's
like,
what I'm saying. Like,
even if you're writing drama, like, isn't part of that tension, like, I'm with a new girl, but now Mary Jane's with a new guy, and I don't like that. Like, I think we flirt with it a little bit. Like, I think Mark Raxton might come up a couple of times, but she will never seriously date anyone, and Peter will seriously date 2 other people.
I don't like that right off.
No.
I'll see how it's executed.
So, I like everything leading to their breakup, but this issue I have major issues with because I think it's not character assassination, but I also don't want to say it's misogynist, but like there is a streak to this that continues through the series, and I'm looking at it through the lens of someone who's read the entire series, that Peter Parker is in fact the best guy. And she knows that, so she stays put and waits.
Yeah.
And Peter Parker will go on and date other people and is not as devoted to Mary Jane as... There is an explanation for why he dates the next girl he dates. And it does... He dates another superhero.
Okay.
And the rationale is, I can't date Mary Jane because she will be in danger. But this is a superhero, so
that's not Bombshell, is it?
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
But she's a superhero, so they're not constantly in danger, and even when I'm not with them, they're putting their lives in danger. So
right.
And I get that on the Peter side, but we never let Mary Jane date anyone else because Peter's the best.
Yeah, it makes Peter look like kind of a jerk face when she's saying he's the best thing ever, and it would make it'd be kind of easier to swallow if both of them. But I mean, they're 15. But if both of them were just really mature about it and said, "We're not going to date each other at all, at least for a while, like anybody for a while."
Mm-hmm. And like, I totally get the like being a 15-year-old, like 2 arcs ago, he said he thought he was going to marry Mary Jane, and I 100% buy the 15-year-old 6 months later is dating somebody else. Right? Like, totally buy that. My problem is that Mary Jane will never move on.
But also, they have experiences that mature people faster. Mm-hmm. And I think that can't be underestimated. That if they started acting more like real adults because of some scary stuff they've had to go through together, and that they're like each other's rock, and we've got to, for instance, like, we do that with some characters in Buffy, where, like, just people have to grow up faster.
Mm-hmm.
he does a really good job of writing what real 15-year-olds are like. At the same time, maybe they should be growing up a little faster.
But I also don't know how you maintain, like, relationship drama once you get to that point.
No, it's hard. Yeah, absolutely.
And we will get to that point, and then he will die. Sure. Because, I don't know if you remember this, but Peter Parker gets everything in the world handed to him the issue before the death arc. So we will get there.
And that's consistent with this book because everything was going right for him right before Gwen Stacy died. And like, things were going really well with him and Mary Jane before Harry Osborn came back.
And that's the rule. It's not the rule of drama, it's the rule of modern drama.
Yeah.
Like, Whedon's like that too.
Yes.
You know someone's going to die when people are happy.
If a couple that you've wanted to see date for 5 seasons get together, one of them is dying. That's what's going to happen. And the next episode.
Or
I'm not talking about anything specific. There's not one specific relationship I'm talking about. Angel season 5 with Fred.
Or if they're a really tragic couple that like broke up and finally reunited, one of them will die.
Yes. So I just remembered a little question I wanted to ask you.
Okay.
Or at least I was about to mention, so let me see if I can remember what it was. What was it? There's a thing that Mary Jane, I can't remember. I had a thing that confused me, and I can't remember what it was now. That's gonna drive me crazy. Anyway, I'll think of it.
But yeah, if you're like a 15-year-old, like this is what you want to read, right? Like you want to read that, like no matter how much you screw up, like that girl's not going anywhere.
Yeah,
they're gonna stay devoted to you, and like it's written by a 30-something-year-old guy. Like, it'd be different if it was Jerry Conway when he was 19 and wrote this issue, right? Like,
yeah.
It's just... I think this is Bendis talking when she says everything. Like,
me too.
Peter's supposed to be the best guy. I just think it kind of does throw Mary Jane under the bus in the long term. Only because I know where it's going. And I know that she will never have a serious relationship that's not
But I
there.
thought that without knowing that.
Sure. So I buy their breakup, I buy the reasons for their breakup, and I buy the situations that get them to the point where they break up. I really don't like that last issue, the epilogue issue. So yeah, I like Hobgoblin more than you do.
It's pretty clearly.
I'm
too confused by some of the logistical things. Is part of it, and I didn't think of some of the interesting thematic stuff you brought up. So.
Well, I've read it a couple of times.
Oh, how lucky! I'm gonna thumb through this here in a second
Okay.
to see if I can remember that thing I was gonna ask you about. But I just caught a thing that I wanted to bring up. How lucky did he get that in his rage when he threw that guy on a car and nothing happened?
Yeah.
That was a little easy. Like I like that scene where he comes out and tries to get DeWitt to arrest him because he's like I went too far and like I was just angry about something and I went too far and you need to arrest me because I got this guy hurt and she's like, nah, he's fine. I'm like, well, you got really lucky there.
She also could be lying.
Oh really?
Yeah.
I didn't think of that.
Because we don't see that guy.
Well, and we see him hit and it looks like there's no way it's as bad as. But I would have written that scene a little bit differently because
it's not
DeWolf. Sorry,
there was something singing. I'm like, that's not right. That's not right. It's Jean DeWolf.
She is so flippant about it in that scene, though, that if he like that's massive cool under pressure.
Yeah,
I don't know if anybody could pull that off, but yeah, but maybe. No, there was a thing.
Remember that for next time, because I'm
okay.
I will try to bring that up next time. That I think she might be lying.
Are there things from later that make you think that?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, it could be the scene exactly as played, but I also think there's a possibility she's lying.
I'm just not going to remember this, I don't think. There was something that I didn't understand why Mary Jane didn't ask questions about, or that somebody didn't ask questions about, and I can't remember what it was.
Because remember, Jean DeWolf is, like, a good friend of Spider-Man's in 616.
Right. Yeah, I need that.
And then dies.
Because he's got that cop friend in the Spider-Man animated series that's not her for some reason.
Yes. But I think she does show up in Spectacular.
Oh, does she?
But yeah, Peter David famously writes the death of Jean DeWolf, and he doesn't know why everyone was angry at him, because she hadn't shown up for like 4 years.
That's really funny.
It'd be like if Commissioner Gordon, well, not Commissioner Gordon because he's like a super regular, but like, there is a Commissioner Gordon type in, I think, no, that guy turns out to be crooked. It's not like it. You've read comics where they're Commissioner Gordon types.
Yeah.
It would be like if Phil Urich died in Born Again. Where like
Yeah.
not Phil, Ben Urich.
Yeah.
Because Miller like made Urich what he is. If like Urich never appeared again and then died like 4 years later, like no one was doing anything with him, right? Like yeah, one time we cared about them, but yeah. So, anyways, Jean DeWolf's kind of important to Spider-Man. She's more important because she died. If she didn't die, no one would remember Jean DeWolf.
Well, that's true of Captain Stacy too.
At least he's Gwen's dad.
Yeah.
Although I honestly believe if he hadn't died first, he would have turned into a supervillain. Like that's the natural course for that character.
Yeah.
But
I feel like you've said that before.
have I?
Maybe.
Okay. But
Man, that's gonna bug me. There was something. Anyway.
And Nick Fury shows up again.
Oh, do you want to talk about Peter punching Nick Fury in the face?
That's pretty good.
He not only shows up again, but he says, I'm mad that Peter punched that freaking Spider-Man punched me in the face, so I want his powers taken away.
I could be wrong. I think this is the last time we see Nick Fury for a while.
Okay. Is that not going to pay off? Because that's another thing they make a big deal out of.
If it does not pay
we
off...
set up so much at the end of this that everything I'm bringing up that was set up, you're like, yeah, that's not a thing.
If it does not pay off, it will not be Bendis' fault. I don't know if you know this. Nick Fury... There was a big crossover called Ultimate Power, and we take Nick Fury and put him in the Supreme Power universe for a while.
What?
Yeah. So that's not on Bendis. Yeah, Nick Fury leaves for a while.
Okay, but you should have at least done something with S.H.I.E.L.D. and then
we keep doing S.H.I.E.L.D. things.
Well, I know,
but we don't do Nick Fury. Okay. I think this is the last time we see him before Ultimate Power, but I could be wrong.
Well, and maybe if Nick Fury disappears, then S.H.I.E.L.D. doesn't have the same like interest that he does. I guess that's fine.
Well, because S.H.I.E.L.D. will get taken over by Carol Danvers.
Oh,
which is everything about Maria Hill done better. Yeah. It is his second draft on Maria Hill, and she's so much better.
I forgot about that.
Because reading Ultimate Carol Danvers, I was like, this is what you were trying to do with Maria Hill, and now I get Maria Hill, and I like Maria Hill more because I get what you were trying to do.
Definitely read a little bit of that somewhere. Does that spill over into Miles?
I think she's an agent, but Nick Fury's definitely back by then.
Yeah, well, no, he is, yeah.
Because Nick Fury comes back when we do Ultimate Avengers, which is parallel to Ultimate Spider-Man when Peter dies.
Okay.
Because those two books cross over. But that... Ultimate Avengers opens with Nick Fury saying, like, I leave for 2 seconds and you ruin everything. Which is meta-commentary on how much the Ultimate Universe had been screwed up after Mark Millar left after Ultimates 2. That book must have been delayed. Think about how many issues of Ultimate Spider-Man came out. Anyways, but yeah, so I don't know if that Nick Fury thing pays off or not. I'm pretty sure this is the last time we see Nick Fury until the relaunch.
You know what's a silly line? So Aunt May and Peter move to a new house.
By the way, that's never been brought up before. It's moving day.
Yeah.
We've never mentioned that they're moving for another house.
Yeah. So they're moving. Now, I do like why they're moving.
Yes, I do too.
And Aunt May doesn't get quite enough character stuff to do in this arc. But that's kind of the big, like...
She's Jonathan Kent in this, where she's like, I never did trust those Osborns.
Yeah, and if memory serves, like, she had kind of personal reasons for not liking them, like...
Well, Ben never liked them just because he was also Jonathan Kent, and, like, didn't trust people with money, I think.
Yeah.
I think. But I think she has a similar remark in the first Goblin.
I thought she had some kind of confrontation with Norman.
I think
early
she
on.
does.
I might be conflating things. I thought there was a whole thing where, like, he shows up and tries to get her to go to dinner with him for some reason.
He tries to get Peter to go.
Yeah.
That's that Goblin.
And she has that, like, get off my lawn speech. Mm-hmm. So, like, if memory serves, I thought that happened. So. I thought that happened.
Something like that happens.
But anyway, she wants to move because people keep dying in her house, and you know, somebody says ghosts, like they don't want to live there anymore. And there's a line where they've moved, and I can't remember who it was, if it was Mary Jane or who, but Peter's like, well, how...
It's Mary Jane.
How are they supposed to know where we live? And she says, we're just 2 blocks away. That doesn't give you an address. Like, there's a lot of houses that are 2 blocks. Like, that doesn't tell you where they live. I thought that was a funny line.
Well, I think
how's she supposed to know? It's only 2 blocks away.
I don't think the question is how she's supposed to know. I think it's how did she know? And Aunt May's like, well, we only moved 2 blocks away.
Oh, maybe that was the line. Maybe
I think so.
Okay.
I think so. I think it makes more sense in context.
Yeah. Okay.
But
anyway. Yeah.
So that's Ultimate Hobgoblin. Question.
Yeah,
so you read this on Marvel Unlimited, right?
I did.
Do the covers say Hobgoblin on them? Like on the things here? I'm pretty sure they do, right?
I don't remember.
Okay.
I think they do. Yeah, they do. They do.
Okay.
Now that you say
I
that,
don't
yeah.
like that, and I also don't like that we start doing Hobgoblin on the cover before he becomes Hobgoblin.
Well, we did it with Carnage.
I know.
Consistent.
I know we did it with Carnage, but we're doing it like trade dressing, which is weird because none of these. I mean, one of them. I mean, that actually is the cover of the trade.
But it sells the book, right?
Yeah.
That's. I mean, I get kind of complaining that that's on the cover before he becomes Hobgoblin, but putting the name of the arc on the cover.
Yeah.
The name of the arc is Hobgoblin.
Yeah, the name of the arc should have been more obscure.
It should have. No, because you're right. Because the problem is, as soon as Harry shows up, you're like, oh, it's Hobgoblin. Like, that's who's going to be Hobgoblin.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
That's what
and even before he turns into Hobgoblin, we do this cover.
That could have been a reveal.
Yeah, yeah, and that's my issue. But I appreciate. But I guess I prefer that to things where it's just like an evergreen cover. Like, it means nothing. It's just.
Here's a cool Spider-Man pose.
Here's a cool Spider-Man pose, which is what we did for a long time on all Marvel comics. It was just like there's a whole run of Daredevil where I can't tell you what happened issue by issue that I read issue by issue because they all are just Daredevil flipping with his baton. Like, I prefer this to that, but like, I don't need you to throw Hobgoblin on the cover, right? Like, just do this with like Peter and Harry, with like Spider-Man and Harry. Like, Spider-Man's on the cover, people can see what it is, and like, I don't know, right? Like,
yeah. Just call it something generic, like Harry Returns or something.
Unless the idea is, like, that's not supposed to be a surprise. I mean, it plays like a dramatic beat.
Yeah, but again,
there is no way to read this and have that be a surprise, whether it's in trade or in issues.
But again, at least, I mean, we're 80 issues in. Consistently, he's done that.
Yeah.
And you could make the argument that the point is we're reimagining these characters and stories. And so what will draw you in is, oh, how is he going to do Venom? How is he going to do Hobgoblin? And so you're not going to... So dramatically, it's going to play as a reveal because that's just how you tell stories, but you know already, and that's what drew you into it in the first place.
I'm not bothered that, like, we know it's the Hobgoblin story, except that Harry's the only suspect.
Yeah, he's the only suspect.
Like, I don't mind Venom because there's no reveal of Venom. I guess there is a reveal of Venom.
Yeah.
I guess we play that dramatically, like, and here's Venom, but, like, it's the moment in the book, whereas here, when he turns into the Hobgoblin, I feel like there's supposed to be surprise. Maybe it's not. But, like, maybe it's not any different than that first time we see Venom.
And it's not any different
5 issues into the Venom arc.
And it's not different than Carnage, either, because you only know that Carnage is what horrible result is going to happen with what Connors is doing. Because his face is on the cover, and the arc is called Carnage. But if they called the arc something else and you didn't have Carnage on the cover, that would have been a cool, crazy reveal. Like, oh, he was making Carnage the whole time.
Yeah.
Like, no, every arc works like that when you bring in a new villain.
You're right. Okay. Yeah, I guess you're right.
I mean, I agree with you too. It'd be cool if those things could be revelations. But I also think they're doing it on purpose.
Yeah, and I guess you're right. They've never done. I don't know. Something about this one bugged me, where I was just like, God, you're throwing Hobgoblin on the cover before he's become Hobgoblin.
Well, and I think part of that's because it's Hobgoblin.
Yeah.
Is because that's a character who is notorious for people wondering who it's going to end up being.
Maybe you're right. Maybe you're right. I do like his design. He's got like abomination-y like fins on his face, and I enjoy that. And I like his claw fingers.
Yeah, I just don't like the monster goblin thing.
That's fair.
But what are you going to do? Because like that's the story he's telling. Like,
I wish
it's a cool idea where it's like we have literal goblins because it's mad science, and it's mad science in the first place with Norman Osborn, I guess. But it's like, you know, he's literally transforming himself. Like Peter Parker literally got transformed, and like so. I have to take the good with the bad. Like I don't love what either of those things look like, to be perfectly honest with you, but
I think they look cool.
I guess I think Hobgoblin.
But I've also heard people complain.
I don't like Green Goblins look at
constantly about Green Goblin just being like a big Hulk.
I don't like it.
I don't know. I like it, but I've been reading it since I was like 11 years old. Like that's just what Ultimate Green Goblin. Like I wasn't mature enough to have that thought.
You probably read that before you read 616 Green Goblin.
Maybe
At 11.
I'd seen the cartoon.
Okay.
So I hadn't read it yet, but I'm familiar with what normal.
You know what
Green
it
Goblin.
looks like.
Yeah. And no, I read the first arc before the movie comes out. I think I don't remember, but so like I'm familiar with other versions of Green Goblin before I get to Green Goblin, but I never had the thought of like I don't like that or like that's different, right? Like I was like everything's different. It's different. So like I just can't think of it that way.
Sure. Yeah. That's
I
fair.
do wish they did something with a glider or they had wings or something. Although I don't like the wing idea, but I wish there was a glider in some way. I don't like that they can't fly. That's my big criticism. I'm fine with the throwing fireballs instead of pumpkin bombs, but they need a way to fly, or they should just fly, which I don't think they can.
They could have wings or something.
Yeah.
They could just pop out. Wouldn't it be cool if they had like retractable wings?
The Spider-Verse has wings. The big ugly one that I don't like at all.
I don't like that either.
I don't mind it as a design alteration. My issue is that he's just a monster. Like, he calls him Norman. That is Norman Osborn. He's just like, this is a Green Goblin. But anyways.
Well, anyway. Thanks a lot for watching, everybody. I hope you had a good time. And that thing I was trying to think of is going to drive me crazy. If I think of it, I'll write it down somewhere and try to get
bring it up next time.
Yeah, I'll bring it up next time. But anyway, thanks a lot for watching, and we will see you guys again for another one next time. You said a Kingpin arc next time?
Yeah, Warriors.
Kingpin in it?
Warriors, which is my favorite arc in the entire series. So wow. That's coming.
And I've definitely never read that one. So
I will let you know up front, Warriors is not... I'm almost positive, is not like New Warriors. It is, I think, a reference to the film Warriors.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah, because at first I was assuming that would just bring in new superheroes or something. Does it not do that?
It does.
Oh, okay.
But you're not getting like Speedball and Nova and Namorita.
I don't need those.
And
cool.
Rage and Turbine. I think is the girl with the. I had one issue of New Warriors when I was younger, and I read a lot. I don't know why. Like, they just seemed cool. But it was number one, not the first printing. I think the second volume.
Yeah.
But, like, I had number one, and so, like, I was like, these are cool new characters I've never heard of before. So if they weren't in that, I don't know who they are.
We'll see you next time, guys. Bye.